A couple of deaths to report. In the news today was a story about a teenager in Texas. He was suicidal, sad, been giving off signals of suicide. His parents ran a pet store. In the pet store were rare snakes. So this kid takes a hooded cobra, takes him to, I believe, a Lowe's, sits outside the car, turns the snake loose on him and lets the snake bite him. Bit him, he's right-handed, bit him several times in the shoulder, bit him a couple more times. Of course,
wow.
You die in 30 minutes after a hooded cobra bites you.
Ooh.
So the cobra gets loose and everybody freaks out. They're all looking like, how can we don't want to get bit.
Well,
and they finally found him. Some car ran over the snake and they had a picture of him. But isn't that a horrible way to die?
Tragic.
Suicide by snake bite.
Wow.
Well, it's somebody that everybody hated. I mean, Jihadi John, the guy who was beheading people. He was one of the leading symbols of the bloodthirsty terrorists of ISIS. And it looks like that we got him with a drone. American drone strike.
Well, the attack was part of a joint effort between the United States and Britain, and it comes as the Kurdish fighters say they've won a major victory against ISIS in Iraq. Heather Sells has the story.
Jihadi John had become a symbol for ISIS after beheading a number of hostages on video.
We'll begin to slaughter your people on your streets.
Pentagon officials say they targeted the terrorist in the ISIS-declared capital of Raqqa, Syria, but early today the U.S. could not confirm his death. The news came as ISIS appears to have suffered another major defeat. The Kurdish militia, called the Peshmerga, entered the strategic town of Sinjar in northern Iraq today and raised the Kurdish flag. CBN's Chuck Holton was recently on the ground there.
The city of Sinjar looks like Stalingrad at this point. There's probably not a square meter of that city that's not bombed out or half destroyed.
ISIS extremists overran Sinjar in August of 2014 as they rampaged across Iraq, driving thousands of people out. The U.S. has been partnering with the Peshmerga during the current attack on Sinjar, backing them with airstrikes. It's a key test for the Obama administration's military strategy of combining local ground forces with U.S. air power.
This is strategically an important area in Iraq in terms of taking the fight to ISIL.
In taking Sinjar, the Peshmerga have also severed a critical ISIS supply line. It runs between Iraq and Syria. ISIS has used Highway 47 for months to move both supplies and fighters. Heather Sells, CBN News.
Thanks, Heather. The thing that is interesting also in the news, the United States has decided that the ISIS people are getting a huge amount of money. Well, it's not huge, but it's in the billions of dollars in oil revenue from refineries and oil fields in northern Syria. So the decision has been made, and it looks long in coming, but it's there now, that they're going to knock those things out for at least 6 to 9 months instead of just knocking them out so they rebuild them in a week or so. They're going to do major damage to those oil fields and oil refineries to take away that source of funding. Well, in other news, a surprising and rather sad revelation. The wife of Pastor Abedini is suspending public efforts to free her husband, who's in prison in Iraq. Why is she doing it? What's the story? Wendy, do you have it?
Well, Pat, Naghmeh says the emotional stress of trying to set Saeed free, along with dealing with his problems behind the scenes, has just been too much. Christianity Today reports she emailed supporters that she had faced physical, emotional, psychological, and sexual abuse through Saeed's addiction to pornography. She says it started early in her marriage and got worse during his time in prison. Naghmeh says she regrets sending those emails and that she did so in a time of great distress. But she's now asking supporters not to give up on him despite his flaws. She says the Lord has been showing her to love unconditionally and not give up. The American Center for Law and Justice told CBN News it is still committed to seeing Saeed set free. And you can find out more about this story on cbnnews.com. Well, here at home, Wall Street is hoping for better days ahead after this Friday the 13th, following a tough sell-off Thursday where the Dow Jones fell 250 points. It was the worst day for stocks since late September, and now the Dow and the S&P 500 are down for the year. The fall in stocks has come as oil prices have also been dropping, with oil now just above $40 a barrel. That could be an indication of a weak global economy, but the Federal Reserve thinks the U.S. economy is still growing and is considering raising interest rates at the end of this year. And Pat, I know you think that is not a good idea.
I think it's crazy. I think what the Fed's been doing for the last few years has been devastating to savers, people on fixed incomes who rely on dividends and interest and so forth. And with that non-existent, I mean, it's really been hurtful to these people, and it's distorted the economy in a terrible fashion. Now, if they decide they want to pull the plug, think what it would be if they raise interest rates like 1% in the United States in the debt that it carries in the trillions of dollars. How would they pay for it? It'll mean that the government is going to have to just do away with a number of services. And the word is that the president doesn't want the Fed to raise interest rates while he's in office because it would kill him. And they're subservient. They're not supposed to be, but they act like they're subservient to the will of the White House. So it's a tough thing. But the bright spot for the Obama economy has been the stock market, which has gone up despite the problems in the economy. And now reality may be setting in, and it doesn't bode well for those of us who are investors in the stocks. Wendy?
Pat, Israeli officials and U.S. congressmen are blasting a new regulation from the European Union. It will put labels on Israeli products made in disputed areas and say they're not made in Israel. Israeli officials and some congressmen are calling it a political decision to delegitimize Israel. Chris Mitchell has that story.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu was furious over the EU decision. He said it brought back dark memories.
Europe should be ashamed of itself. It took an immoral decision. Of the hundreds of territorial conflicts around the world, it chose to single out Israel and Israel alone, while it's fighting its back against the wall, against the wave of terror.
Products made in Israeli factories and businesses in areas disputed by Israel and the Palestinians will no longer say made in Israel. That includes products made in Judea and Samaria, the West Bank, the Golan Heights, and even here in the eastern part of Jerusalem. All areas promised to Israel in the Bible. Ironically, those businesses often employ Palestinian workers and provide a much better income than they'd receive from Palestinian employers.
The European Union is not going to hurt the Israeli economy. It's strong enough to weather this. But it's the Palestinian workers in Israeli enterprises in Judea and Samaria that will be hurt. This will not advance peace. It will certainly not advance truth and justice. It's wrong.
Earlier, 36 U.S. senators signed a letter sent to EU Foreign Policy Chief Federica Mogherini. They expressed concern over the guidelines, saying they appeared to be intended to discourage Europeans from purchasing these products and promote a de facto boycott of Israel, a key ally and the only true democracy in the Middle East. We believe strongly that these efforts are unwarranted, dangerous, and damaging to the prospects of a negotiated solution to this conflict. Some Israelis went even further in their condemnation.
This is outraging because this is using double standards. You know, you can ask yourself, there are many territorial debates and regional debates in the world. And this special treatment of labeling products is kept only for the Jewish state.
The decision by the European Union to label Israeli products from Judea, Samaria, and the Golan Heights is an anti-Semitic decision. It just is.
The EU defended the decision, saying it was technical, not political. But EU Parliament member Roger Helmer said it's just plain wrong.
Boycotts of that sort are simply unacceptable. We wouldn't have any trade left at all if we wouldn't trade with people where we had some sort of problem or issue with them.
Helmer told CBN News that the labeling may actually benefit Israeli businesses.
There is a large Jewish community in many European countries, and also others who might sympathize with the Israeli cause, who certainly won't be boycotting and indeed might be inclined to look for such products.
One Israeli businessman said it will be Europe's loss in the end.
And we should move ahead and develop new markets, open new markets towards the east, China, India, Asian nations, a much greater potential there for Israeli technology and knowledge transfer. And if Europe wants to isolate themselves from that movement, to their loss.
Chris Mitchell, CBN News, Jerusalem.
Thanks, Chris. Well, in health news, the obesity crisis is getting worse in America, not better. A new report from the Centers for Disease Control says the obesity rate among American adults rose to 38% from 32% about a decade earlier. Experts had thought the obesity rate had leveled off, and they don't know why it's rising instead. The new report also shows women have a higher level of obesity than men, driven higher rates among female blacks and Hispanics. But there was some good news. The obesity rate in kids from 2 to 19 did not change that much. So not that great news, Pat. But we're doing our part here on the 700 Club.
Well, we are, but Wendy, the reason the statistics went up is that I went out to dinner with some friends last night, and they served dessert, and I ate some dessert, and that's what did it. It's totally skewed. All right.
Such power. I just.